Welcome, my friends, to the Sage of Quay Radio Hour, your home for free and critical thinking. And I'm your host, Mike Williams. Tonight, my special guest is Pamela Tartar. Pamela is a serious student of metaphysics and for more than 35 years has lived and taught actualization of potentiality. And as you will hear from our discussion, she is a truly awakened soul who openly shares her wisdom in pursuit of a better world. Pamela and her husband David are the purveyors of the internet radio station Pure Momentum Network, whose lineup of hosts include Pamela herself, Sofia Smallstorm, Ingri Cassel, Lois Smith, Deborah Tavares, and others. And to kick things off, I asked Pamela how her life's journey began, and here is what she had to say.
I know that I came in with some awarenesses that most people don't have. I remember questioning God and religion when I was 9 or 10 years old. And I asked a guy that was teaching our religion class who was working on his doctorate in theology a few questions, and I was promptly asked to be seated, and they called my parents to talk to them. And the answer to every question was, we take this by faith. This is our belief system. And that didn't sit well with me, even as a 9 and 10-year-old child. So I really began to dig. And what I decided was that I needed to talk to God personally. And I know that sounds like a religious freak, and I'm totally anti-religion right now. I know what religion is. But at that time, that's all I had. And so I would go in my bedroom and I would close the door and I would talk to God, just like I'd talk to Mother or anybody else. And what I came away with, I didn't hear voices or anything, but what I came away with was that I needed to look inside me. And so I would stand in the mirror and look at myself. And I'd expect to see something there, and I didn't see anything consciously. But that's exactly where we all need to go. We need to look inside of who we are as human beings and see the amazing features that we have. And so from that point, as a 9 or 10-year-old, I moved forward to exploring my emotional body and getting to know what emotions were about and why they did what they did and what they were trying to tell me. And then when I got to the spirit body, I started having guides, and I started channeling and doing past life regressions, and I talked about things and new things that there is absolutely no way that I had any experience of in this lifetime. And it came from another lifetime, although I didn't have all the details of lifetimes like I do now. Back then I had the information, and I understand that because when we gain wisdom through a process of choice, it's ours in every lifetime. And when we need it, it just comes forward. We don't have to do anything magical or say anything special. When we need that wisdom that we have gained in other lifetimes, it comes forward to us, and we have it. And I don't think I'd be exaggerating to say I have 50 or more instances I could talk about along those lines. Then I didn't get stuck in the spirit guides and the channeling and all of that. Thank goodness I didn't. I moved on to finding out more about myself. I wanted to learn even more and peel the layers off more about who I was. And if I could remember these past lives, well, what does that mean? And what is my purpose here right now? There has to be a reason. I could not accept in religion that this lifetime is spent basically trying to earn enough points so that you could do something in the next life. That never made sense to me, even as a child.
And you never know when you have enough points either.
Well, I'll tell you what, I've been with many people when they passed over, and they always feel like they do not have enough points.
Yeah.
And that's the fear that comes into it, and it's horrific. And when my father passed over in 90, I was down in Florida with him. I would spend 30 and 40 days down there and 10 days come back home to Missouri. And the preachers would come, and I'd meet them at the door. And I'd say, if you're going to talk about sin or hell or damnation, you can't come in this house. This house is filled with love and hope and life. And that's all that will enter this door. And my mother said, I can't believe you talked to brother so-and-so like that. And I said, well, this is Daddy's passing time. I will not have this crazy insanity invading his passing time. He's going to have a cushion of love, and that's what he had.
Good for you.
What I know, I live, Michael, and I always have from as far back as I can remember. If I know something, I live it.
No, that's excellent. Now, you had mentioned the past lives. Were you regressed or were you doing readings? How did that work?
It just happened because I was exploring somewhere, and I can't tell you where. I found out about all the different parts of us, you know, the auric or energy body and the spiritual, mental, emotional, and physical bodies. So I took each one of those and I talked to them and interacted with them just like I would a different person. And that may sound schizophrenic, but it isn't, because people are not taught that they even have those parts of themselves, much less to look for them or get to know them or understand how they work. I did. I took it seriously because as a youngster, I was pretty concerned about the fact that I didn't know what was going on. I knew religion wasn't right. I knew that. And I had questioned my parents as far as they could go. And I had questioned religious teachers as far as they could go. By the time I was 9, I had read the Bible through twice, every word, and I just knew that something was badly wrong, but I didn't know what it was yet. And so when I started studying who I was, when I got to the spirit part of me, I knew that was the part that was ever and always connected to Creator. I knew that. And what came to me from my spirit was that Creator is in every atom of my being, just like my ancestors, my parents, are in every atom of my physical body. And so I just delved into that. And I always was old, Michael. I've always been like a grandmother. You know, I had a great childhood. My parents loved me. I was my dad's princess, and my mother didn't work out of the home. But I'll tell you what, I was uncomfortable about the way things were with the religion and whatnot. And I was studying. I was always studying about religions. I could talk to you about different religions when I was 10 and 11 years old.
And that's unbelievable, because many people who espouse being religious today, fundamentalists and so on, couldn't make the same claim.
I know priests that have never read the Bible.
Yes, that's exactly right.
And I don't believe that it's true. I know it's been messed with, deleted and added to in very precarious places, I mean, on purpose. But at the same time, that's what I had to start with. And what I know, more than I know I'm talking to you, is that when we stand up and seek on purpose and with purpose to find the truth, not the way the truth movement calls the truth, but to really find the truth, we will find it. And I don't care how old or how young you are, you will find that truth.
Now, do you get the sense, Pamela, today that more and more people are looking for this truth?
Yes and no. In my awareness, people that are still 51% or better in their true nature as a human being, yes, they are. And it's accelerating. For people who are so inhumane, meaning not in their true nature, they're that far away from their true nature as a human being, no, they don't even feel it or see it or know it.
Now, what do you think is the catalyst behind an individual or person being inhumane, or taking it a step further, evil? How do you assess that? How does that come about?
Well, in my awareness and from my study and seeking, there is what I call the opposition, and that puts every group that's evil, everything that's against all organic biological life, comes under the heading of the opposition for me. And this will throw you for a loop, but the opposition is not organic. It is machine-like, and I can prove it. And I have had interaction with it. I think every human being has had interaction with it, but they don't recognize it. It is very much like the Borg in Star Trek, assimilating everything Do you know that, what I'm talking about?
You're referring to the archons?
It is the archon. I have never heard anyone talk about it in the sense of it being so machine-like. I know that in the Gnostic Gospels, which I do remember one of my lifetimes as a Gnostic, and I was a female then, and I do know that most of the information they wrote down to help us maneuver around this and defend against this machine were destroyed. And the closest thing that I can come to something that would get us thinking in the right direction is the Borg, which is something that is not organic. It is a machine. It needs power to operate. It operates and works from programs. And doesn't that sound familiar? And all it wants to do is assimilate and then discard. Assimilate, discard. And I've seen it. It does not have a set lifetime like we do because it's a machine. So it's had hundreds of thousands of years to watch human behavior and to gather human information on human beings. And that's what that big information gathering building is out in, if you can call it a building, in Utah. It's just more info, more data for this machine.
Now, Pamela, when you say you have met or seen this machine, in what context were you able to do that?
In another dimension. I have traveled dimensions and in my consciousness, and it is in another dimension. And if everything that is in a natural order would have stayed in its natural order, this machine opposition could never have entered our Earth space because we had a protection around us. But when the order that was supposed to watch our maturing and to watch our development busted through that and came down, and we know them as the Watchers, when they came down, they burst a hole in our protection, and then anything could come through that. Before then, nothing could. And we were safe to develop and to mature out of our vulnerability and immaturity. And what has happened is when we were messed with and when our species was interloped, when they merged with our humanity by kidnapping the women, and that's what they did do, and raping them. When that happened, that allowed for all these other things to come in. And had they stayed in their place, nothing could have gotten into us. And that is where evil or darkness or the opposition came from.
Are you referring to the Nephilim?
The Watchers, after they made it with the human beings, they were called the Nephilim, yes.
Okay. So do you then believe that humanity was engineered, genetically engineered by these Watchers?
No, I do not.
Okay.
I don't believe that we've been genetically engineered at all. I know there are several scenarios that the opposition can pull out and use at any time. And we know from Sitchin's work that the dark forces want us to think that the Anunnaki genetically engineered us. I know personally that that is incorrect. I've studied it, and I always said that Sitchin knew more than he was telling us. I would always tell my husband after I read one of the books that there's something missing here. And what I have found out since his passing is that he was channeling that information. And then there's another guy, and I can't remember his name, and I hate to do this. I know his first name starts with Mike or Michael, has said that the interpretations aren't even correct. You know, when he's interpreted what he calls Aramaic languages and stuff, what he says it says is not there. And so that supports what I already know. But that is a story, just like the Bible is a story, so that if it comes to a point where the opposition needs to use that against us by having a hologram of a savior or a messiah, they can pull that out of the hat and use that. Or if they need to pull out the story of our alien parents or our alien brothers, which the Vatican just called them our brothers, and that they don't need saving in any way, they can pull that out of a hat and the actual ships will show up. I know that we are not genetically engineered, but they want us to think we are, because that pulls us even further away from knowing who and what we are and away from our true nature.
And the interview that you referred to, as a matter of fact, I think I did watch that interview, and I forgot the gentleman's last name also, but I believe if it's the same interview we're talking about here, that he had mentioned that Zecharia Sitchin had taken a certain amount of license, if you will, to fill in the gaps. In other words, he put his own little spin on the story around the Anunnaki.
Right, right. Well, in my study, and this is not something that I know with a capital K, but I'm working on it. When I say I know something with a capital K, I've worked it through and I know it. This I'm working on. My latest hypothesis is that the Anunnaki came from the Nephilim, who came from the Watchers who raped the human beings, the women. And that's who I think they came from. And the opposition in all its forms always wants to lead us away from who we are and toward them. And that's exactly what this whole story is. And they can use it in so many ways, because if the opposition needs to get us in even more fear than we live in every second on this planet, they can have the ships show up and say it's the Anunnaki and they're our parents and we need to welcome them. And all of this craziness, that foundation has been laid very well for that story. I think it has been laid almost as well as the biblical story of the Messiah and the Savior. It's the same story. It's the same scenario. It's the same program.
Well, it's becoming the new version of the Messiah, right? Because a lot of people have stepped away from the Christian version of a Savior. And so now we have a new version of the Messiah story, and it comes in the flavor of the Anunnaki.
Right. And, 15 years ago, you didn't even hear that word.
Right.
People didn't even know what that word was. So there is this organization of this machine that I call the opposition in its totality, and all of the evilnesses come under that. The New World Order and Satanism and demons and all that stuff comes under that. And I call them the opposition because when I start naming things, that separates me from people. Like if I start talking about Satanism, which is very real, then that gets me in line with the Christians or the Jews or whoever believes in Satanism. If I start talking about, we'll say politics, then that separates me from people who are so-called liberals or conservatives. So anything that I can do to step away from and be opposite of division, that's what I want to do. I go to great pains to do that. And that's why I say that the opposition is anything and anyone who is opposing and against biological life. And there is something out there, because to survive on this planet, we have certain basics that we must have. And that's food, air, water, and shelter. Tell me when in history all of those things have been attacked like they are right now.
Oh, it's completely overboard now. I mean, it's full steam ahead.
And it is layer upon layer. It's not enough to mess with our food and give us GMO seeds. We've got to mess with the ground. We have got to then, in addition to the GMO, add more Roundup and more poisons. I mean, it's layer upon layer upon layer. And what all of this tells me, Michael, is that we are so powerful when we find out who we are and we go back to our true nature. We are so powerful that they want to make darn sure with programming and updates to those programming that we will never go in that direction. People don't want to know who they are.
They don't want to know who they are because they believe they know who they are based upon the indoctrination and the propaganda. Now, Pamela, you had mentioned that this Borg, the opposition, needs power to operate.
That's right.
What constitutes that power?
I talk about the features and the potential that we have as a human being. And one of our amazing features is that we're creators. We were created with purpose, on purpose, and we ourselves are creators. And I've had people fight with me on air about saying that. How dare you say that? Because people still think that you can insult the God and tick him off by saying that you are a creator. Well, I am a creator, and so are you. And my husband's a musician and an audio engineer, and when he wants to write a song, he begins that in his thought world, and then in his imagination. And then he begins to add details in his imagination. And then he comes into the studio and picks up an instrument. He plays them all but the keyboard. And he starts creating that in this dimension. But he's already created it in the other dimension, which is inside himself. Mm-hmm. So we are creators because that piece of music did not exist before he created it. And it is part of the opposition process or program, because they don't process, human beings process. It is part of their activity to make sure we don't go in there and find that out. So they keep treating us like we are machines because they want us to be machines. Now, earlier, they wanted to merge with humans, and they tried. That's what the hybrid programs were about. And it did not work. And I know that. I have experience with it. And we may talk about that on another show. But it did not work. You cannot merge a machine with a human being. We are too amazing for that. We're too complex for that. We're biological life. You can't do that. And I remember when my spirit teachers taught me so clearly about that. And they said to me, I want you to send a packet of love to your copier machine. And that was back in the days when the copier machine was about the size of a dresser, you know. And it was in my home, and I'm sitting there, and I did it. I was asked to do it, and I trust my teacher. And so I visualized this heart, and I visualized me putting my creative energy in it and sending it out from my heart to that copier machine. And my spirit teacher said, do you feel anything coming back? And I said, no. What did I do wrong? Do it again. I did that 3 times before I got it. It doesn't matter what emotion you send at a machine, it cannot respond because it is not organic. We are treating evilness and badness and the bad guys and the opposition and all those people that come under that as if they're human, and they are not. And when a person has given up so much of their true nature that they are now 51% inhumane, they no longer are human. Because when you're pregnant, you can't be a little bit pregnant, and you can't be a little bit machine. You're either machine or you're organic.
Well, this explains the lack of empathy, because
Absolutely.
A machine will have no empathy.
Absolutely.
It has no emotions. It has no feelings. And you mentioned before about the creativity and the imagination. And that's really what the human spirit is all about. And this is why the opposition shuts down the right side of the brain. They don't want that
Absolutely.
creativity and imagination. Everything is forced to the left side of the brain. The schools,
Absolutely.
your jobs, all of that.
Right. And what do they do to our new children that are coming in that have a higher development in those areas, and they are not so easily programmed in those areas? They put them in our prison systems that we call education, that again is the opposite of what the word says, and they drug them. Why do they drug them? Because if they don't, they will come up with the answers we need. Do you know, about last month, I heard about a young man. He was young. He was either 17 or 19, that created a machine that can go out in the ocean and clear up all that plastic. You know, there are islands of plastic out there. And he created that, and he's a kid. He was either 17 or 19 years old. And you probably haven't even heard about it. I don't know if anybody's heard about it. What we should be hearing is that there are 100 of them in every ocean, every few miles. But no, they're not doing it. I'm telling you, we are creators, and we're also problem solvers. And so when these new children, and I call them new, they've been coming in for a long time, and especially since the 90s and the 2000s, but they have a resistance kind of to some of these programs. And if they are not kept under constant drugging, then they will figure out what the problem is and solve it, because that's what they do. And that's what we do as human beings. There are so many features that we have that's part of being a human that are just not even thought of anymore. They're just not even considered. And when you see on TV, which we don't even watch TV, but someone did put this on a YouTube, where there was a rush to shop on Black Friday on Walmart, and they just knocked people down and just stepped over them and trampled them.
Oh, yeah.
Is that humane in any way?
No, that's an annual event.
It is the most inhumane thing ever, because in every atom of our being is a survival mechanism, and that's on every part of us, not just our physical body. And not only do we have the survival mechanism, but we also have in our nature to protect other human beings. That's part of being an organic being.
You know, but the thing is, Pamela, and I agree with everything that you're saying. I get it. I understand it. But you take a step back sometimes and you think to yourself, how is this fixable? As an example, the scene on, let's say, Black Friday at Walmart, where they're knocking people over, punching people, hurting people, just so they can get a can opener for $1, whatever it may be. How do we overcome that? How do we overcome that level of programming? Because it's not just that. There are so many things. I was talking with Sofia, and we were talking about, let's just say, the aerosol spraying and the chemtrails as an example. You can't even get people to look up and notice that they're being sprayed. They're too busy looking at their phones, looking at their feet. I know there's no easy answer to this. But what are your thoughts on how do we turn the ship around?
Well, what I am presenting as my message right now is that we must come back to our human nature, and then we must mature in that human nature, and that will fix everything. Because once we come back to our true nature, which means that we have to actually seek it out and find out what it means to be a human being. And then everything that doesn't fit in that nature means it's inhumane, and you refuse it. You don't comply with any of that stuff. If all of us would stay home and not go out to Walmart, this wouldn't even exist. It's like my pet peeve of the TSA. Somebody started something a couple of years ago, and over Thanksgiving they were going to do a strike.
Right.
And they just took the TSA out for like 7 to 10 days.
Right. They took down the machines.
Right.
I remember that.
Michael, we have the power. And I'm not just saying that. I've seen it. I've seen the possibility for the future. I have seen our power. I have seen the power in me. And I know we have it. But we cannot have our power if we don't know who we are. It's just like you can't give me $1 million if you don't have $1 million. I can't use my features if I don't even know what they are and how they work, and how and when and where and why to use them. This has been my message for years.
Too many people, I have a saying, it's on my website, people believe that they're a body with a soul, not a soul with a body. And even the first part of it is probably a leap of faith, because some folks don't even understand the fact that they have a soul. They're not connected to spirit, which I think, Pamela, is the biggest problem that we have, that humanity has. Many people have completely lost that connectedness.
Absolutely. And again, that was done on purpose. All the peoples on our planet that knew that we were part of nature and to connect with other parts of nature, to be whole and to be supported by that nature, by that natural order of things, they were all decimated. Now, they were tortured to get their information first, and then they were totally destroyed to the point that we aren't even talking about them any longer. And I was just talking to someone the other day about wisdom. Do you even know what wisdom is? Well, the elders in the tribal life knew what wisdom was, because they'd made their own choices. They'd experienced it. They had lived their experiences. They had learned from it, and they had moved that into wisdom by knowing how, when, and where to use and not to use that information. Where are our elders? They're being warehoused and drugged up and tied to chairs, being taken care of, I say loosely, by beings who are inhumane. They could not treat these people like this if there was any respect for wisdom and elders in our world.
And along with taking the elders out of the picture, removing their influence, they have systematically dismantled the entire family structure.
Right, Michael, that was a program. I watched that program unfold. And I am old enough to have seen that And to have seen it go from mothers, all mothers stayed home, except for the occasional one that was divorced, and it was occasional. Mothers stayed home, and when children came home, and when the husband came home, he had a safe place to be. And it was hard work. My mother had 4 children. She prepared 3 complete full meals and taught us everything we needed to know about life. Now that is a full-time plus job. And they took it seriously. But all of a sudden, it was not respected anymore to be a mother.
No, they went on a campaign to ridicule motherhood and stay-at-home moms.
Oh, yes, you're not going to work? Well, I guess your husband won't let you. You need to stand up to him. Oh, listen, I remember all that. And I remember as a single girl, people coming up to me and saying, I haven't seen you at the NOW meetings, you know, the National Organization for Women. I haven't seen you there, and I know you're modern. And I know, because I wasn't modern, I just was reared in such a way that I could make my own choices. I was a mature person. I said, you will never see me at those places. That is to destroy a woman. That is to destroy everything about a woman. You're not valued for who and what you are. They're trying to make you into something that you're not, and they'll never do that to me. And something I've said since I've been 18 or 19 is, I am not a machine. There is not one part of me that's a machine, and I will never be a machine. And that was before I know what I know now. I did not know what I know now about the opposition being a machine.
So you just had this innate knowledge and wisdom within you at a very early age.
Yes, I did. And I was in a fertile environment by being in a love environment. My parents loved each other and they loved us. My dad hugged and kissed and told us he loved us many times every day. And my mother was always there. And it was fertile for exploring yourself and for exploring life. And what's happened is, sadly, and I do cry about this for humanity, literally, no one, very few people are living their lives. They are existing and doing their best against all odds to survive.
Right.
That is not living.
No, many people are simply in survival mode. I try to explain to folks that at the current course and speed, most of the country will be destitute in about 20 years. And I know that sounds dire, but all you need to do is just apply reason. There's no pension plans. 401ks were decimated back in 2008. Healthcare is a total scam and it's unaffordable, and there's no jobs. I mean, we have 20% unemployment today. That's real unemployment, not the fake numbers that the government puts out, not the 6.7% or whatever the number is today. So unless there is a drastic change in direction, and I mean drastic, the future for most people is very bleak, and the thing is, they don't even know it. The whole system is anti-humanity.
It is. It absolutely is. And that's why we absolutely must look at this opposition as a machine, because it is. And the power source for this opposition is us. I don't know how old you are, but do you remember when employees used to be called personnel?
Yes. Yep.
And you remember when they started to name that department human resources?
Yep.
That is the blatant announcement that we are the power source. The blatant announcement. And what do you do with resources? You use them when they're depleted, you discard them, and you go get another resource. And that is exactly what they've done to us.
I lived it. I'm 55, and I existed in the corporate world for a very long time, and I know exactly what you're talking about. The personnel department became human resources. They started referring to employees as assets.
Yeah.
Human beings became commodities.
Absolutely.
Easily discardable.
Yes. And what happens with a resource? You use it till it's gone.
Right.
And that's what they do to people. And I have personal experience with this as well. And when you get sick, you think you've got the best insurance in the world. And they pay off the doctors to say that you can go back to work when you can't even walk. I could not walk down my hall. And the insurance companies got my doctor to say that I was well enough to go to work. And my husband had to hold me up in the shower And that's how deep all of this is. And it couldn't happen if we did not fuel it. And so if we can get all human beings, which we can't get all, but if we could get a few human beings to see what is going on from the tippy top, not cutting off the tail of the lizard so it'll grow back, but cut the head off of the lizard so it's dead. That's what I'm talking about. And when my spirit teachers taught me about the machine and how a machine won't work if you don't plug it in. And when a machine does work, it does its specific duty. And what we call that today is programming. And what is television? It's television programming.
Right.
And, everything is a program in school, in your education system. It's a program. We're working on this program. We're working on that program. And I'm telling you, one thing that I do not have covered on our network right now is secular homeschooling and Common Core, and I'm looking for that. So if anybody out there knows about that and wants to host a show, please contact Mike and he'll get you to me. But it is horrendous to send your child to this prison preparation camp, to this consumers camp, and workers camp. So you're going to end up in one or all three of those places if you go to the public education system. They are not education.
No, it's not education. And you had mentioned, Pamela, consumerism, and a few months ago, I did an entire show on consumerism and debt. And in that show, I was trying to explain to the audience that the system that they are operating in, which they feed, I call it feeding the beast, has them running on a hamster wheel 24/7. And again, it's mind-boggling. People don't see this.
Right. Why do you think they call them mortgage? It's from the word mort, death.
Yes.
In a lot of the things that the opposition does, if we would pick apart the vocabulary and really look at it, they're telling us what they are. I mean, a human being should not run on programs. A human being should run on mature choices made with lots of criteria, because maturing people do look around. They don't just have linear thought. They have spiral thought, and they look from different vantage points. A little baby will scream until it gets a toy and then throw it down, and then get another toy and throw it down. You know what I mean? That's what we expect from babies.
Yeah.
But that's what we're doing, because we have been stunted. We have been kept perpetually infantile in our humanity. The human race is retarded.
I agree. It's very frustrating to watch, Pamela. I'm laughing because as you're speaking, I'm thinking to myself, all the conversations I've had with people on these types of topics, in one ear, out the other,
right,
have been called everything you could probably think of. I'll choose the nice stuff,
right.
Tinfoil hat wearer, conspiracy theorist, nut job. And what really amazes me as I'm standing there listening to all this, these folks debating me, calling me names and the rock throwing and everything else, I say to them, why don't you just take a step back and take a look around you and take a look at what's going on? Do you like what you see? It's total dysfunction, and it's just amazing to me that, again, they don't see this.
Right.
Why don't you take a look around and see what's going on?
Well, what they've been believing and what they've been working on and working through and working with till now has gotten us in this mess we're in. And it is horrendous. It is, oh my God. I remember when I was a kid, I was a young teenager, and I got some necklaces all tied up in knots, little small necklaces. And I worked and worked and worked on them. I couldn't get it unknotted. And I had to take it to a jeweler, a professional, to unknot those. And sometimes when I think of the mess that we're in, because this opposition machine has covered every area of humanity and every area of our survival needs, they've covered them in the opposite way. And it makes me think of that knotted up necklace pile I had that I could not get undone. I don't know how it got that way, but boy, it can get undone. And it was given back to me correct. And I made sure that I took care of it in a better way after that. But we can straighten this out. I absolutely have seen the possibilities. I know it can be done, and I know it won't take millions of us. It will take very few of us, because when a mature, developing human being is in alignment with its true nature, it can go up against 10,000 of the machines. And when two human beings are aligned with their true nature, come together, shoulder to shoulder, and use their human features, those two beings can come up against 100,000 of these machines and be successful. I know this. I have experience with this. I have gone to other dimensions and looked down on the possibility of this happening. And I know it can happen. That's the only reason I'm here, Michael. I should have been dead so many times, it's not even funny. And in '09, they sent my husband home 5 times and said, she'll not live through the night. And they were very cold about it, of course. She'll not live through the night, and you better hope she doesn't, because she will be a vegetable. And they did everything in their power to let me die and to make me die. And that's just one time. I could tell you at least 8 things. 8 times, 8 experiences that I should be dead. One of them was the big tornado, but in Joplin, Missouri in 11. But I'll tell you what, I'm here for a purpose. And every time I get a chance to speak, I'm going to speak, because since it's not going to take that many of us to turn this around, all I need is for a couple of people to hear what I say and process it in their true humanity, and they will see I'm right. Human beings process information by the choices that they experience and live, and choices they make. What's happening now is we're living choices that somebody else has made for us, and they're no good. Because if a person loves you or cares about you or wants you to mature, they refuse to make certain choices. Remember when you tell your children, now, why don't you choose your clothes to wear today? Yeah, you remember that?
Yep.
You've always done it. Now all of a sudden it's time for that person to make their own choice. And it doesn't matter if they put purple and blue and whatever colors, they chose it. And by gosh, that's their choice. And you're just going to let them do it. Well, as we mature, we make more choices and more difficult choices. But if we are mature, we pay attention to the colors and we pay attention to what's going on, and we gather criteria. And what I see now is people are so pooped from trying to survive in this programmed virtual world that they just really would like it if somebody else would make their choices. And they are, and look what's happening.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, Pamela, are seeing that they're on a train and it's running at a track. Because even the most thick-headed are seeing now that the machine, the opposition, is stepping up the rate and pace in which it's trying to oppress the human spirit. You can see it. It's all around us today. So even the folks that the naysayers and the deniers from, and I'm going to pick maybe 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, people that I actually had discussions with and maybe even had some heated discussions with, they are seeing now what it is I was talking about 5 years ago, because it's rolling up on their doorstep. There's no denying it now for many, many people. Now, they may not know exactly what to do, but the important thing is at least now they're acknowledging the fact that something is very, very broken and it needs to be fixed.
Oh, yes, absolutely. And, you know, if you get just a little bit of freedom, you want more.
Right.
And if you get just a little bit experience with living your life instead of existing, and that's all anybody's doing. I mean, you can go by and see these beautiful homes, and there's nobody there all day. They might as well go down to the hotel, because all they're doing is spending the night there. And then on the weekend, they've got to go play the games that everybody else plays, you know, a run here, run there. There is no quiet, peaceful time. There is no home. There is no home. That was done on purpose. I watched it happen. But I did want to tell you this before I forget. Starting back in 2012 in December, when everybody thought we were going to have a big calamity, that is when the program that ends the way we count and measure time began to end. So now we're nearing the end of the way that we measure time. And I was taught about this by my spirit teachers back in the early 80s, that there would come a time when I wouldn't measure time by the calendar or even the seasons. I would measure time by events and happenings. And I've been doing that since the 2000s, but especially since 2012, because I see where we are now. I know where we are in time and space. And to support that, the natural order is sending in energy to us from the galactic center. And there are aeons that live in the galactic center, if you know about some of the Gnostic writings.
Yes. In fact, I read John Lash's book, which taught me an awful lot about Gnosticism.
Really, that's great. That's wonderful. Well, I'll tell you, that energy is coming in. We had a wave that started in on April the 11th, and we started our network on April the 15th, and the energy was very, very fast, and it was sped up a lot, and it was hard to keep pace. It was almost as if you were running and couldn't catch up. And for the beings that are still 51% in their human nature, they're going to be sped up even more. They're going to see more clearly. They're going to know more. When they seek something inside themselves, they're going to find it faster. I mean all of that literally. And there's 5 more waves coming. And that's what's going to happen. People, and I had someone talk to me a couple of days ago and said they were having this conversation with someone that they've had for 3 years many times. And all of a sudden this guy looks at him and says, "Why haven't we talked about this before?" And he's like, "We've talked about it for 3 years. You just didn't get it then." And now he got it. He sees it. He sees there's something wrong. He sees that the two-party system is just another game. And he sees that there are no choices. We go and pull that lever and think we're choosing a government agency, a leader or something. And it's just a game.
Oh, yeah, you're just electing somebody. It's electing somebody who was selected. You know, it is a big game. It's a joke. Absolute joke.
And that is not making a choice. So we are lied to on every level. You know, belief has a lie right in the middle of it. And everything that is a belief system, we need to question it. And I will tell you that if you will work on it, people out there, and I'm saying this with true love, you will find the answer that these belief systems are programs running to keep you away from your true nature so you will never be powerful. It is making you perpetually powerless. I know that 100%, and I sure wish you all would know it, because then you can get your power back. It's inside you. We will never compete with this machine technologically. Never, ever. And of course, that's what everybody wants. We will never compete with this machine in outthinking it. We can't do it. It's not, that's not how it is. But we can outcreate it. And we can outchoose it. And we can non-comply. We can stop complying with all this stuff. And we can stop playing their games. And when you get up in the morning and you go to your polling place and you pull that lever and you come out wearing the sticker, "I voted," and yay, rah. And it's insanity. It's absolutely insanity. We have not elected a president since Abraham Lincoln, and we may not have even elected him. And you can go back and prove that to yourself now. You don't need to believe anything anyone says, because that has a lie in it. So search it out for yourself. Search out the information. There's no excuse, and we don't have any more time.
I agree, Pamela. The runway is getting shorter and shorter, and people must awaken.
Well, one of the reasons I talk about humanity must mature is because we're being forced into and coerced into living someone else's choice. For instance, the Bundy Ranch. That property doesn't even belong to the people. It belongs to the UN. Right. We need to be working on that. But the militia and Sheriff Mack came in and wanted to start a revolution out there in that instance. And we cannot start a revolution because we have no plans for after the revolution. What are we going to do after the revolution? It's kind of like when kids decide to go out and steal a car and they run around and play in that car and then they get caught. They didn't think about what was going to happen after they get caught because they're kids. They're immature. We can't do that any longer. We have got to start thinking in spiral ways, not linear. We can't afford it any longer. We must grow up. We must look at things from different vantage points, from behind and from the sides, all of that. If we do it, then we'll see, somebody's just baiting me to start a war. And once the blood starts flowing, what do we do then? What's the plan then? There isn't one. And I'm going to tell you something. You look back in history, as messed up and jacked up as it is, look back in history and see what happened after the Civil War. Look what happened after all of these things. Our country has never been the same. 1/3 of our people were murdered in that. Brother against brother. The families have never been the same since then. And I'm telling you, we have not thought past our nose because we're immature.
First of all, we're not going to win a gunfight. They're basically chomping at the bit for something like that to happen. They want something to go down where it's violent.
Absolutely.
Because they're really good at violence.
Absolutely.
So that's the wrong path to go down if you think that you're going to win your freedom that way. It's just not going to happen.
It won't happen. It will not happen. And all you have to do is look around the world and look at what has happened. As soon as people throw out their government that is bad, that they don't like, but they don't have a plan, who comes marching in there? Somebody that's going to tell them who the provisional government is.
Right.
And the IMF, the World Bank, comes in and trades them worthless paper for all their resources.
Right.
I mean, it is a 100% tyranny. And what the plan is for us, and this breaks my heart to say the words, but I must. What the plan is for us is that we will beg for the tyranny, not just take it and not just accept it when that boot is on our neck, but we're going to beg them because we are so used to not making our own choices and so used to being not responsible, irresponsible, and so programmed into inhumanity that we will literally ask for the tyranny.
Yeah, and it's going to come in the flavor of help, right? This is what I was referring to before when I said in 20 years, much of the population will be destitute. And a destitute population is going to be on their hands and knees crawling back to the quote-unquote authorities to help them, to feed them, to house them, and so on.
We can change it because I don't think we have 20 years. I think that humanity as we know it now will be extinct within 20 years if we don't turn it around. And I know that sounds drastic, but we can't take much more poisoning. And when I was young and when you were young, we didn't see many people in wheelchairs and on canes. It was highly unusual to see someone in a wheelchair, unless they were just there temporarily with a broken leg that needed to be stuck out straight or something.
Right.
Now, you can't go anywhere without them having wheelchairs at the front door, and they're all used. People are very ill, and we have survived. Oh my goodness. It's just a testament to who and what we are as a human being. We've survived all of this torture and toxicity, and we've survived the trauma and the programming, but we can't keep going. We've got to refuel ourselves, and the only way we can do it is to stop giving our energy away to the machine and to feed ourselves. Because the first thing you do when you get on an airplane is they tell you to put the mask over you if anything happens and then help your buddy. You've got to have it yourself or you can't help anybody else.
We have to get people to understand that, Pamela. They have to understand that they have to get up off their knees and they have to start taking initiative, being responsible, being accountable to their fellow humans, to the planet.
That's right. That's right. And do you know how much support we have being in a natural order? That if I don't have you as a friend to talk to, I can go out here and I can connect with a tree or a bird or the horse in the field behind me. I am not alone when I know that I'm part of a biological nature order. And that's been stripped from us when the tribal people were murdered and removed from the world, from the planet. And they've done it to all the people. There are a few left, not many, and most of them that I know about have been threatened in horrendous ways. And most of what I know comes from past life memories and reliving some of those things. It's what I remember and what I know. And I consider it quite a blessing that I'm able to do that. And I do need to say something here. I do not recommend that people seek spirit guides or channeling now. The place we're in time and space, is very tricky. We have not been here before. This is new. There is nobody on this planet that has lived this time and space. Nobody. And I know that for sure. I talked to Mama Earth about it. She explained it to me because I told her, I said, my gifts and my features are not working. And she said, we're in a different place. You'll have different ones. You use them in different ways. And it's true. It's just like being in another dimension. That's a clue. Well, anyway, we absolutely have got to look at where we are in programming, because as long as we continue to survive and exist in programs in a virtual world, we cannot get out of this. But I know we can. All we've got to do is see it. And once you see one, pick any one of them. Once you see one, you will see them all.
Very wise words, Pamela, and it has been just a pleasure listening to your message and listening to the pragmatic approach to how we get spirit back into the lives of people and how that can change the world. So just an amazing message that you have. And I was wondering if you wouldn't mind telling the audience a bit about your radio station, Pure Momentum Network.
Oh, I would love to. Thank you so much. And I really have enjoyed being with you, and I appreciate it. And with your listeners. My husband and I have a talk show network, and it's called Pure Momentum Network, puremomentum.net. We decided that we wanted to have a platform that hosts could come and not be interrupted by commercials, and they could speak their piece that they have researched and that's on their heart that humanity needs right now. And so we used all of our past experience on radio shows of what not to do and what to do, and we put it together. It's an infant. It's in its infant stage, but we will grow. And each host has a 2-hour show weekly, and it's available 24/7 on puremomentum.net. And the first hour is free. The second hour is by subscription because the network has to support itself so we can continue. It's very minimal. It's less than 2 coffees a month. And David told me today that it might only be 1 coffee according to where you get it.
Well, I just want to say, Pamela, I have personally been to Pure Momentum Network, and I have listened in on some of the shows, some of the podcasts. There is a wonderful lineup of hosts, which include Pamela Tartar herself, Sofia Smallstorm, Ingri Cassel, Lois Smith, Deborah Tavares, and others. And I highly recommend to my audience that you take a listen to Pure Momentum Network and check out what Pamela and her husband David have put together there, because it really is very, very good. And I also want to say, Pamela, that it has been an absolute pleasure having you on the show.
Well, thank you for that confirmation, Michael. I appreciate it, and I so appreciate the opportunity to speak what is on my heart, because I get excited and I come out forceful, but it's just because I believe it so much, and that's a lie. I'm putting an X across that. I know it. When I say belief, because it's in our system, I X it out and I put no in place of it. But I do appreciate it so much. Thank you, and I'll be happy to come back. Thank you for your invitation.
You're very, very welcome, Pamela, and thank you so much again for being on the show.
Okay, good night.
Good night now. And that concludes my interview with Pamela Tartar, and I hope you enjoyed the discussion as much as I did. As always, I'd like to thank everyone for listening and for visiting our blog, sageofquay.com. Also, if you head over to laboroflovemusic.com, you can listen to my album, Leaving Dystopia. And remember, live in truth and always serve creation. It's really that simple. See everyone next week. Be safe, enjoy, and God bless.